Hey Tommy, alright, so here is your past life spread. So, what we're going to do again is go over where you were, what you did with the majority of your time, an important day with the relationship and feelings involved, another important day, the death and lesson learned, and we'll get hints of time throughout. So, as I was shuffling though, sometimes other things come through. So before we get to this life, I do want to mention that what came through was it showed just like a glimpse of a life, and maybe you can connect with this in some way, but it's kind of like it felt kind of like the Old West, but a little bit more, like a little bit past the Old West, almost like it's the Old West, and it's changing into a more modern society from the old like cowboy shootout day kind of thing. It almost feels like the industrial revolution is either happening or about to begin, and we're at a time, or they were showing me that a time like before it gets into gear. So check out what time period that industrial thing is, because it feels like it's like at the cusp of it, or it's just about to change over into that kind of thing. But it feels like we're like out west. We're in kind of like an old western town. And that's a glimpse they gave me. And so run with that however you can connect with that, whether it's an interest or you've always felt pulled towards that kind of thing or that genre or whatever it is. So I just wanted to at least put that out there, that's one thing that just came through before before I laid this out, we got here. Okay? So this one, where we're going first here. Oh, you see the clouds are covering the sun. Anyway. So where we're going is the island card, and the island can be anything from Australia to Hawaii to Ireland to, you know what I mean? So, what was cool was when I was shuffling, it was, I got a feeling that I felt like we were being pulled to kind of an Asian, aspect. And then it felt like when I put this down, like it wasn't permanent, or I guess what I want to say, it's not in just one place. So we're looking at it feels like you start off in one place and you move somewhere else. And yeah, a lot of people do move, but in this case, it feels like we're going to be seeing great movement, like a big deal of a movement kind of thing. And this does feel a little bit more modern. So this feels like it feels like it's the 20th century. And this could possibly be your last life, possibly. But then again, there is, in case you haven't looked into it or anything like that, there's that theory of the multiverse where sometimes these readings that come up are actually other aspects or parallel lives that go on. But this feels like it could be what you would consider, or what most people would consider, their last life. Maybe 2 lifetimes ago. Sometimes lives are, you're born and you die within 5 days. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is that it's more modern. It's just modern, and it feels like we're going to Japan. And it's interesting because what they did was they first put me. They put me in Hawaii. And then they put me in Japan. So Japan is where you start. That's what it feels like. So it's like they went backwards almost. But it feels like we're looking at a male life in Japan. And this male, and he's born into a very traditional family. It feels very traditional. It feels like he's the only son. Might even be the only child. But feels like, yeah. It feels like he's the only child. And it feels like there are aspects of his upbringing where the mother kind of teaches him things as though she had a daughter. It's almost like his mother wanted a daughter or a second sibling that would have been a daughter or something like that, but it didn't happen. So this aspect of this man grew up young, growing up, learning things that a daughter might learn as well. And it's not like, wearing dresses. It's not like that. But it's like learning certain things in the household and certain ways and certain, like preferences, things like that. Certain hobbies, whatever it is, where it feels like it's everything combined. Whether she had a girl or a boy, she's just like, whatever, I'm gonna teach you everything. And it feels like he spends a lot of time with his mom. Let me see. The dad works a lot. It feels like the dad is kind of removed in the sense where the dad works so much that he's very tired. There's a lot of love there, but it's just so tired, like not a lot of time. So I feel like there's a lot of time spent with the mother figure. So connections you can make with this card could be, for example, if you've ever been pulled towards Japan, pulled towards Hawaii. So there are obviously different cultures, but at the same time, there's a fusion there. The word fusion hasn't come up. The word fusion, I feel like, is coming up for a reason. If that connects with you in any way, I feel like it's going to be food, because we're going to go to what you did with the majority of your time, which was food. I feel like that ties in with being brought up by the mother who wished she had a girl teaching him the cooking techniques, because he goes into food. And it feels like he goes into food with his mother's recipes, that kind of thing. So connections still though with this card. The idea of living on an island, the idea of living somewhere maybe utopian or like idyllic, sorry, to you might be living on an island somewhere. So if you've ever been pulled, again, towards Hawaiian or Japanese culture, language, food, history, you've seen photos and you've been pulled in, it triggers you emotionally, your idea of the best vacation you could take, if someone were to say, where would you want to go? First choice might be Japan or Hawaii. Hold on. Then there's the concept of moving. So I feel like we might get somewhere. I don't know if it's going to come up, but it feels like there was a big move, and it had to do with striking out on his own. Hold on. That's what's happening. Okay, because I looked at here, so now there's more stuff coming through. I'll get to this in a second. The idea of transitioning from one place to another. This could be coming up because in your life you might be considering transitioning either geographically from one place to another, or even like transitioning careers or whatever it is. There's, so many transitions can be had. So if you're in a transition, I feel like this would be a message for you, just that this is coming up to show you that a transition, once made, can be very successful if you follow your excitement and you follow your gut. So other connections you can make to this would be the mother figure. I feel like it would be one of those things where it's either a direct connection or an opposite one, where the direct connection would be you chose to come into this life and have a good relationship with your mother. Might even be the kind of thing where you take after her or you were her pal growing up. On the other hand, the opposite connection would be something like you came into this life to be at odds with your mother and butt heads, so that you would know what it would be like to have a relationship with a mother that didn't go so smoothly. Because here it feels like it went very smoothly. There's a lot of love there and a lot of attention. You could be someone that needs a lot of attention. You might like to be, I guess for lack of better words, coddled. It's not a bad thing. It's just like you like to be, you like to be, what's it called? Just, given attention and that kind of thing. On the other hand, you could also have come back with the opposite connection where you are the one giving attention. You're the one that coddles others because this person was babied, so to speak, for lack of better words, which just means they were extremely loved and extremely doted on. The concept of the only child, you may have chosen to come back into this life to have siblings and to understand what it's like or feel what it's like to have siblings, which can go a couple ways. So if you have siblings in this life and it's rocky with one or more of them or all of them, that would make a lot of sense because you're just experiencing what it's like to have relationships with other kids in the house kind of thing. Otherwise, it'd be the direct connection where being a solo child, you would just do that again because it was so smooth. You just want to continue with that so you can take care of other things. So keep that in mind because there's something having to do with the relationships of the family, the mother, and then the idea of having siblings. And this would also be a message that if you do find that you have a sibling or many where you don't get along with them, you butt heads, whatever it is, this is just a message telling you, hey, this is a lesson you chose to learn in this life. And as soon as you realize that it's a lesson, that you chose it, it can make things a lot more smoother in relationships, just in general too. When you realize, oh, I chose to have a relationship with this person, like we are meant to meet, we are meant to experience the experience we're having together in this life for a reason, even if it's crappy, Yeah, so keep that in mind. Keep making connections where you can, okay? Now we're going to go to the majority, what you do the majority of the time. Again, it's about, it feels like you're taking your mother's recipes and turning them into a place where you cook, and it's very popular. And I feel like your gig, though, is taking her recipes and modernizing them and creating the fusion that we see everywhere today is so popular. I feel like it's almost like you get in on the beginnings of what we call fusion today without having the word fusion. So it's almost like you are the grassroots of what now is super popular with all the fusion foods. And so we're looking at Japanese fusion, we're looking at Asian fusion food. So this can mean a couple things too. One, you could love that food these days. Not just love it, you could love to cook, you can love to experiment in the kitchen. Even if it doesn't turn out great, you might just love to experiment things. You might like to mix things together and just see what happens. It feels like there's something about savory and sweet going together. If that connects with you, there you go. On the other hand, this can also be the opposite connection where you came back to not have to do anything with food and you're a horrible cook, you know, that kind of thing. But there's also the feeling that this person creating these fusions with the food is the medium, so to speak. If you're an artist, you have paint, you have clay. This kind of artistry is food. So it doesn't necessarily mean in this life that you are focused on food, but it would mean possibly that if you are interested in taking something that is traditional and adding your own flair to it, if that's interesting to you and that's important to you, that would be a connection here, and that feels like it's very much part of you. This would also feel like a message if you're looking for something having to do with upping your career, starting a business, building your reputation, getting your face recognition, something out there. It would be here. It would be in taking something that is traditional or something that is just known for whatever it is, how it is, and it's never changed or it hasn't changed in a long time, and adding your own flair to it to create something new, a fusion. So look for the fusion in your creative archives, so to speak, or like bring fusion into your life, and I feel like you're going to find a lot of expression, creativity, clarity, forward movement, progress, even wealth. And happiness, of course. So look for the fusion, if that makes sense. Keep making connections where you can. We're going to move to this day here. So this first day is trauma, and stuff was already coming through. So this is what I wanted to get to, is the trauma card, the spouse card, and torn. So what is happening is you got married, you grew up a traditional life, you married a girl your mother loved. You loved her too. And everything is just like very going according to plan, and then it feels like something happens where there's an accident of some sort, but something happens where your wife gets a brain injury is what it feels like, which I don't get that a lot with these, but it feels like there's something about it where it has a brain injury to the point where either one, she's a vegetable, or two, she's in a coma and passes. So she's basically, it feels like she's not there. Even if she's alive, the vegetable thing, it's like there's nothing behind the eyes anymore. So this is where, I feel like for months and months and months, even maybe a year, I feel like it's a whole year, because there's something that feels traditional about waiting a year. It's as though you were kind of mourning her, even if she was still alive, but a vegetable or whatever. I hate to use that word. I'm so sorry. I don't know what else to say for that, but that's what's coming through. So it feels like there would be something about waiting the year, and almost like your mother is involved in you making sure that you do what is proper, which is waiting the year, whether she died or not. And it feels like in that time you realize that you need to get out of there. And it's almost like one of those things of like, I need to run away and start fresh and clean slate because this is overwhelming and emotional and I don't feel like myself. So it feels like that's what happens, is because of this traumatic thing that happens, you leave and you strike out to go bring your ideas and your stuff to, that's where you go to Hawaii. And let me think, hold on. And it feels like, so you go to Hawaii, and it feels like you just start off as like a, kind of like a chef, like a line chef. You start in the beginning again kind of thing. And it feels like in Japan, it's almost like you had your own like little corner kiosk restaurant thing that was all yours, and then you get to Hawaii and you start as a line cook working your way up in a restaurant. It feels like it's like a local hotspot kind of thing, and it's very different from your life, and that's what you're looking for, is something very different, because in Japan it felt like very just like peaceful, go with the flow, same thing every day. And then you get here, and with this new place and this like hotspot kind of place, it's a whole different vibe. And that's what you were going for. You want to get a new vibe going. It's almost like it feels like they're showing me this because where you place yourself in your environment affects your physicality and your mentality. So I feel like there's a message in here to make sure that you are surrounding yourself with the right environment, that you're putting yourself in the right environment, and let's say you are moving or something, there's a transition there, don't jump the gun. Make sure that it is the right place. You don't have to settle, is what it feels like. If there's something happening with you, you don't have to settle. Make sure that it's what you want. And it feels like environment, but when I say it, it feels like it could be really about a lot of different things. So it's just an overall message of making sure you do not settle, because you can get what you want. You just have to be a little bit patient, okay? This also speaks about how you might feel with big changes or big sadnesses. You might have had a pattern in your life of running away. And if that's the case, that would be a direct connection. On the other hand, because we see him running away here, I hate to use the word running away. I mean, really, it's traumatic. So he's just trying to kind of find himself. But in finding himself, he does run away. So he's leaving his family, leaving his homeland, and just trying to like figure life out. So the opposite connection you'd be making is coming into this life where you don't run away, you stay put, you face your issues head on, face those fears or whatever it is, and face the changes coming. And so there are different connections when it comes to how you react to certain situations that are emotionally, mentally overwhelming and changes. So this could be coming up too if, again, it feels like we're going through some patterns here of transition and change. So whatever's going on in your life right now, if you've been considering changing, I feel like changing something, the message would be to make sure that if you're making a change, make sure you're not running away from a problem. Make sure that you're handling the problem. Even if you do end up moving or transitioning or the change occurs, make sure you're not pushing it down in you and repressing anything or in denial or not dealing with things that you know you should be dealing with now versus them rearing their ugly heads later to deal with when they're too much to handle kind of thing. And also like how you approach it too. Like, so making sure you're not running away, handling it, and just making sure that also the environment, again, the environment you're in has a vibration of itself, if that makes sense. So every place has its own energy, its own vibration, and we take that into ourselves because we're so connected to the planet and to our environment. So make sure that you're in what we would call, I guess, a high vibrational environment if you want to see the progress that I feel is what is like wanting to come into your life if it hasn't already. If you don't see forward movement, it's coming. It's just make sure you're in the right environment for it. Or at least make sure that you go to an environment where it is high vibe. So at least make sure on the weekend you are, wherever that may be, go to the beach or go to nature or go somewhere that makes you very, very happy, and make sure you are consciously appreciating the environment, because when you consciously appreciate the environment, that's what taking in the environment means. So you're basically vibrating with the vibration of the environment's energy at the time, if that makes sense. But that can be very helpful. So keep that in mind. The Torn card, of course, comes in because it just feels like this guy is lost. He doesn't know what to do, but he's making decisions, but he still doesn't really know what's on the end result. Like, he's coping, but it's like, he's like, well, I'm coping right now, but okay, let's check in with myself in a month from now. Let's check in 3 months. Let's check in later and see if I'm still, like, getting by or getting through this, or if I'm able to handle being so far from home and basically becoming another person in that way. And there's also this idea of like, am I right in becoming this new person, or is this just like a false thing that I'm just trying to do to escape reality, right? So it's just a message making sure you're not escaping reality. It feels very vital that you in your current life do not do anything to escape reality. There are things you can do when things are hard or you're stressed out or whatever, you know, play a video game or read a book or take a vacation or whatever it is. You know, everyone has different stuff, but like make sure you're not drinking, like over drinking. Make sure you're not I guess with the video games, make sure you're not doing video games every day until 4 a.m., you know, that kind of thing. Moderation, okay? As far as coping. So make sure, yeah. So keep that in mind. Keep making connections where you can. This can also speak to with your partner. If you find that you are overprotective, or you like to check in, or you might even, hold on. If you're taking care of the household or taking care of your partner, either emotionally, mentally, physically, or financially, whatever it may be, if you're the caretaker, it could very well be that it's the same soul here, but now you're back in this life to experience what it's like to fulfill life with that person alive. So that could be very much so. And you have to resonate with this yourself. So if that feels right to you, if you can sense that in your relationship, go with it. Don't doubt it. That's what it feels like. So again, it has to resonate with you, but keep making connections here. Now, the next important day is the Enlightenment card, and it feels like kind of a short day because this is just kind of like a aha moment. The card is family, the relationship, and the feeling here is just kind of melancholy. And it feels like on this day you realize, shit, I need to go home. That's what you realize. You're like, it's like you're doing well where you are, and you're enjoying the new environment because it's new, it's different, it's interesting, it's beautiful. You're working, you're being successful, and you're making money, and everything's peachy and fine, but you know, you're away from home. This is not your homeland, and your parents are still home, and it like hits you. They're getting old. You know what I mean? Like, so you're having that moment. You're like, okay, it's time to go home. And this is the Enlightenment card because it's an aha moment. It's a moment where you're like, what's really important to me? I need to get my shit together, and what's important is my family. So I need to go home, and I need to be with my family. And even though you're still upset and sad about the wife and still somewhat traumatized, you've been gone enough. You've been gone away long enough, and time has passed long enough, and you've thought about things long enough where you're like, okay, I am as good as I can be with what happened with losing a partner that I loved. So now let's go home, because I miss home. So you go home. And it's really about understanding what is really important, and that is the relationships in your life. And it doesn't have to be blood for family. It's the people you make your family, and that is the most important thing in life, period. So make connections here where you can. Because there's obviously messages in that we just, you know, family, important, what's important, priority. Make sure you are prioritizing things correctly. And there's like, what they'd like to give you is a little exercise that we've been getting exercises coming through these readings, which is really fun. And one of them is the hindsight exercise. And they're saying, so it's like they want you to look a year down the road and place yourself there mentally. Mentally imagine with as much vividness as you can. Placing yourself a year down the road based on the path that you're currently on. Looking back, once you place yourself down that, you know, you're over here, a year later, you're right here, looking back over the whole year. Do you like what you see? Do you resent anything? Is there anything you would change? Is there anything you would do better? Is there anything you would do more of, less of? You know what I mean? So do that with yourself in a quiet time when you have some moments to really relax and mentally put yourself a year ahead. Imagine it and feel it out. And then make the changes that you see that you would want to change if there were any, right? So keep that in mind, keep making connections, and we're going to move to the Death card. So for the Death card, this is the Burn Baby Burn card, and this is, you know, a lot of times like witches burn at the stake, and people, house fires and things like that. But you know what's interesting is this feels like you die or you pass among the things that you doing what you love, and that is cooking and creating and experimenting. By the way, if you have a knack or a interest in experimentation, it doesn't have to be food, it could be food, but again, experimentation, innovation, invention, making something your own, putting something out there that is solely yours, that you built from scratch, that you created, or maybe again took traditional and made it your own. There's something about that is coming through, and it might even be it might even be a message for you to pursue something that you've had on your mind. Let's say you've thought of a really cool app to design, but you just don't know how to design it. Well, this would be a message for you to take the next step, to go and look into copywriting the idea and hiring a designer and learning how to code or whatever it is that you got to do. This feels like it's a message to take that next step, so that you could see what you want to see come about in your lifetime. But the burn card, it feels like you pass while you're creating something, just almost like you're old. It's like you're older and it's like your heart gives out. It's very hot, by the way. It feels like you're over this big pot and you're just kind of stewing, and then you just kind of like topple down, and I feel like the heat got to you, almost like a heat stroke. And it's like the heat stroke just didn't let up. You didn't come back from it, because it feels, again, like you were much older, so the recovery time feels like it was just not there, so to speak. But it feels like once you went home, you felt the groundedness that you had missed being away from home. And it feels like your parents lived very long. It feels like there's something, again, with you and your mom, that one, like the soul. I mean, it could be the mom in this life that we're looking at could be the love of your life in this life. It doesn't matter what role they played, it's just the relationship, the dynamics of it. But there was a lot of groundedness with being near your parents, or your mom especially, a lot of groundedness. So you're looking for the person in your life that makes you feel grounded, and you're just choosing to live, again, with that soul. And also a message that if you do know that soul, by the way, that person would come to your mind when I'm talking about being grounded and this person who would make you feel grounded. If someone comes to your mind, that's someone you want to keep around. That's someone you want to treat well, and someone that has your back. They're good for you. So keep that in mind. And anyway, so that's the death. So that means any connections you make here would be if you're sensitive to temperature change, if you don't like hot places, or you're easily affected by heat, or you're dehydrated very easily. On the other hand, it could be that you actually like hot places because you enjoyed working around the heat, making your stuff, inventing things. It was very fun for you, and you were always sweating. So it could be that you prefer hot, even humid weather, possibly. So it can go either way with that, but keep making connections with the burn card however you can, or I should say the heat card, because it's not really burning, it's heat. And then this is great because this sums it all up. The simplicity card is the lesson, and you really, really learned it because you had this beautiful aha moment of, okay, yeah, I traveled the world and I left everything behind and started fresh, and it's exciting, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes down to it, what's most important is the ones I love, feeling grounded, and my homeland. That's what really meant to you was all that stuff meant the world to you, so to speak. So this is just a card reminding you to go back to, I want to say home base, but not geographically. It's to go back, like make sure you are consistently returning to a place within yourself that is grounded, that does feel familiar and good to you. That doesn't mean don't take risks and don't step outside the box of comfort zones or anything like that. But it means that make sure that you know your foundation. And the foundation is just, it's simple. It's the ones you love. It's the place that makes you feel grounded. And that's really it. It's your environment and the people you love. There you go. So keep making connections with the simplicity card, however you can. But there is your past life. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're able to make some connections. And thanks for letting me read you.